Lawn Solutions Australia is bringing the world's leading turf varieties to both your local golf course and home lawn. With superior turf varieties like Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda, Sir Grange Zoysia and the newly launched Zoysia Australis, available exclusively through Lawn Solutions Australia, we have the perfect lawn for you. For more information or to find your local accredited supplier, visit lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. That's lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au.
I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to the 87th episode of Playing from the Tips, the weekly podcast covering all the goings-on in professional golf presented by Golf Australia magazine. I'm your host, Jimmy Emanuel, once again attempting to control and coerce our so-called experts into making some sense and staying on topic as we cover the Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia, LPGA and Asian Tours, all in action in a relatively quiet week for professional golf. First of our so-called experts is usually like the PGA Tour is to this show, basically present every single week with a rare one or two outs and always providing something to talk about. Rod Morri, welcome.
Thank you very much, mate. PGA Tour's having a couple of weeks off, so why shouldn't I? Working from home,
exactly.
Not in the studio, so a little peek behind the curtains there for the listeners. Jimmy, why doesn't anybody celebrate the milestone of 87? This should be a very important episode for us.
13 before 100, is that?
Yeah.
Or just one more than 86?
One less than 88?
One less than 88. It's got a lot to recommend it, but nobody ever picks up. Anyway, that's my offering for today. Let's move on.
Okay, very good. The next, he's more like the Asian Tour. He disappears for weeks at a time with no real rhyme or reason, then returns, does a run, and then disappears yet again. Persistent, yet hard to track. Adrian Logue, welcome.
Thanks, Jimmy. And yeah, rarely covered very well on TV as well. So
very nice. Yeah. You got to work. You got to work hard to be an Asian Tour fan. You got to work hard to stay up with Logue. So yes, I think that's a nice analogy. Well done.
A niche area of the golf world. There's Logue.
The committed are really into it, but it is a smaller market.
There's no Logue tracker, and if there is, shame on you.
Before we dive into what might be a quiet week globally, but a big one at home for us in Australia, we always reflect on the highlights and lowlights from last week. What have we got? I'll start. Jack Buchanan winning 2 events already on the Aussie Tour and doing it with a course record in the last round is pretty good going for a young guy who's been a pro for, I worked out, less than a year.
Yeah. I didn't watch it. I actually watched the LPGA. I got drawn into that. I'm a big Gino Titican fan. I do like Ronnie Yin. They had a great battle in the LPGA, but I agree with you, Jimmy. I was watching the scores. I'm not good at the flipping back and forth. Is it harder to flip back and forth channels on the TV than it used to be? It feels like it is to me. It's not
Maybe
a simple
with
process.
your thumb.
Yeah, that's not helping. Well, you combine that with the remote and you've got a very, very bad deal going on there. So, yes, I do tend to wander into Netflix when I'm looking for KO by mistake. But, yes, I couldn't flip back and forth between them, but I was watching this. That was a hell of a final round. He's marking himself as a bit of a player, Jimmy. Winning is not easy at any level, and 2 in 4 weeks says something about a player. That's he's going to be one to watch, and that's what this summer does. It gives us the players to watch, and it's interesting to watch it unfold. So,
absolutely,
I thought the LPGA was a highlight.
LPGA was a highlight for sure. Ronnie Yin,
Gino, the shot that she hit into the last Gino Titican, that you can't see a better shot. It's as good as it gets. 3-wood to about 27, high, cutting 3-wood to a tight pin. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, really good finish.
And then I think the genesis as well with the 2 Korean players going head-to-head in Korea in a playoff. Ben Arn's driver off the deck on 15 was unbelievable. Tom Kim trying to win. Tom Kim maybe getting a little bit angry post not winning, according to some pictures that are circulating in his locker. I think that was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Nice. What did he do? Did he go to town on the locker?
Well, a locker door is no longer attached to the locker.
Like a two-piece locker. There's one in every locker room, Jimmy. You've just got to find it.
And he's released a statement today saying it's all fine and under control. It was an issue with the door, something. But
Do you like to see that or not?
I don't know.
You don't like to see it, but it's nonetheless, you do like to see the fire of like somebody who wants to win, like
Yeah. It's Tom Kim's piece of work this
Rory ripping his shirt, that's
it's the stuff that used to be behind closed doors. So now you hear about it, see it. So it's uncomfortable, I think, but it shows passion. But Tom Kim's putting together a year of interesting work.
His work in the headlines has been excellent this year, Jimmy. No question. He's played all right on the course too, but his work, you're right. Do you reckon it's deliberate? Is he being advised? It's a whole different world we live in now. Players have to approach their public profile differently. And I wonder whether, I don't know.
I don't know whether he's not been advised and he's really letting the natural competitive beast show out. So, yeah, interesting. Closing our own locker door on last week. We didn't have our best stuff, but still managed 3 top 10s. And amazingly, across, I think it was 5 events, not a single miscut.
Oh, really?
That's unlike us. We normally come out pretty hard.
Well, we're having a good end to the year, Jimmy. Golf's come down to our part of the world now. And so I think we've all found a bit of form and we're inspired. So that's nice. Good, consistent golf. Yeah.
So we are now.
This is only known to me, but I was going to pick Jack Buchanan. So, that's
that happened to me with the lotto numbers once.
That was just between my 2 ears in my mind. Nobody else would know that. So, I understand if nobody believes me, but I was going to pick Jack Buchanan.
Are you the type that's watching the lotto draw saying to your other half, 19, I would have picked that. I would have that on my list. Yeah. Oh, 7. No, this is ridiculous. I can't believe this. Yeah. Well done, Logan. Give Logan another win, would you, Jimmy?
Yeah, well, we'll currently keep it at 148 top 10s and 27 wins for the year to date, which, of course, are numbers unrivaled by a tipping podcast with one tipster who just makes up that they tipped other things last week. There you go. I changed it on the fly for you.
Yeah, good work.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Any sentence that starts with, nobody but me knows this.
Yeah.
Only I know this. Like, oh, this will be good. It's just it's an open checkbook from there, isn't it?
Yes. Moving on to this week, and mentioned previously, big week for Australian golf as the Queensland PGA heads to Nudgee Golf Club, and most importantly, so too does Cam Smith as he prepares to play 4 Challenger PGA Tour of Australasia events in a row. Before we get to the details of the event and the golf course and everything like that, what do we make of Cam playing 4 straight events, which following this is New South Wales Open, BMW Australian PGA and ISPS Honda Australian Open?
Is it a PR move, Jimmy, or is it a golf move for world golf ranking points? What's Cam's motivation, do you think? I'm not sure.
I think it's a golf move motivated not by world ranking points, but by the fact he wants to win the 2 big events here. And he hasn't played any tournament golf, and there's not much on offer to him unless he goes plays the Asian Tour. He's been home for a little while, so he's already home. He has a house not too far away from Nudgee, so that's a pretty sensible one. He's had a good relationship with Golf New South Wales. It's a bit more money. He's not played down there. I think it's just a golf move. He wants to win the PGA and the Australian Open. And the best way to do it is to play yourself into form. He showed last year when he came down, when he had his Bucks party and a few other things going on before playing the PGA, he wasn't in golf form. Yeah, so he just needs to play golf tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It always feels, particularly for Cam, maybe and a couple of others on Live, there's a little bit of in your face about everything they do to the PGA Tour. I feel like there's a bit of that with Cam, and playing at the New South Wales Open. I know the PGA Tour is off this week, but if the PGA Tour were playing and Cam was teeing up in the New South Wales Open or the Queensland PGA, there's something in that too, I think, which he would. I don't think it's the main motivator, but I agree with you. Now that you've laid out that case, I think that's that you make a good point, because it was terrible last year. He cried last year, didn't he? He really felt it. The Australian PGA, terrible stuff.
Credit to Paul Munnings for making him cry. That's
well done,
one of my various bosses. Well done, Munnings.
Double if you can do it again this year.
But the thing that is unarguable is that it's good for the tour here. This week at Nudgee, they will come in their droves. So it'll be unbelievable. And I imagine the next week at Murray Downs as well. So Kurai course at Nudgee welcomes play. James Wilshere redesign in 2021 that's now getting fairly familiar. It's had this event a couple of years in a row, right next to Brisbane Airport, so it's convenient. Dramatically different layout to what was there before. So you got elevated greens, bunkers that sort of sit up in the fairways. The greens are quite dramatic in their slope and their ridges and everything like that. Pockets of water all throughout. It'll be 6,400 and a little bit meters this week. And the bunkers are sort of a main sort of deterrent for certain parts of the golf course, ringed by that zoysia grass, so you can get those hanging up lies and all that sort of stuff. The closing stretch of holes is what sort of makes it exciting. So the last is a par 3 with a huge ridge down the middle. Basically, if you hit it in the back and the pin's on the front, 3 putting is hard, let alone 2 putting. So there's been a couple of really good finishes here, including last year when Phoenix Campbell, still an amateur, won, getting in the clubhouse early and they all fell apart on the way back in. He's going to defend his title in the field headlined by Cam, obviously. But there's also all 3 winners this season. So Buchanan, Will Bruyères and Elvis Smiley, and all the regulars have been playing so far, as well as some that we haven't seen much of. Anthony Quayle, Harrison Crowe, Lachlan Barker and Quinn Croker, who played last week, who's also turned pro like Phoenix Campbell, part of that next sort of run of Aussie golf pros. So who's going to win? Rod, we'll go to you first.
You almost can't not tip Cam, can you? There's a bit of a danger there, I suppose, for him. Logue, isn't there? Cam Smith. If he doesn't win this, the world's going to go, what's happened there in some sort of a way, which is a silly thing to say. But yeah, there'll be a huge expectation on him. He stands up so far head and shoulders above the rest of the field in terms of achievements. Yeah, I suppose you have to tip Cam. Sorry, I cut you off there, Logan. I didn't mean to.
Well, I think the course is going to be a bit tricky for him. Like it's not going to be the sort of thing that he's been encountering week in, week out on the international tours. And it's not, I mean, frankly, it's not the sort of thing he would have grown up with much either in Queensland. It's a completely different thing altogether. So I don't know. I think the course isn't going to fit. It's not a good fit for Cam.
Yeah.
But particularly the green's been pretty crazy. So
yeah, I'd agree with that. Then who do you pick, Logan? Do you want to give us 2? Do you want to give us 1 now and then reserve one for next week?
That's right.
I mean, I could take you on a whole journey with my thought processes here, but I'm just going to go straight to Phoenix Campbell, who I really like, and I'd actually forgotten that he won last year. But he's already had some good results as a pro as well. I think he came second a couple of weeks ago.
He was second last week. Yeah,
last week, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, look, I think Phoenix Campbell's a bit of a star in the making. We haven't seen much of him yet, and I'm getting in early on him, Phoenix Campbell.
He's a very impressive player. And to finish second, he had a bit of a run through Japan and all this sort of stuff is very impressive. I think Cam's interesting. It'll be fascinating to watch, and it's boring to tip him, so you're boring, Rod. But I think it'll be interesting to watch. But I'm sure he's been out there and played it a couple of times to try and get used to it. I know he's been playing at home, and I know his dad Des played Nudgy when I spoke to Cam last. He spoke to him that morning, doing maybe recon for the family. But I'm going to tip one of our other winners for the year, Elvis Smiley, who casually just put in another top 10 last week, and I believe was a member at Nudgy for some time, may even still be. So he's going to be one who's going to know it. That's sort of, it's a ball striker's golf course. Elvis's ball striking is elite these days. So I think Elvis, and I think we can almost call Elvis the John Catlin of our tour here, that you just, if you're not sure, you just tip Elvis. So I'm going with Elvis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's true, isn't it, Jimmy? Each year we've found one player has stood out, and I think I said a couple of weeks ago, I think it'll be Elvis for our summer this year with Micheluzzi, Tom Powerhorer. There always seems to be one player who has a
Daniel
good
Gale.
summer. Daniel Gale.
Kazuma Kabori.
Yep. And you feel like it might be Elvis this year. He feels like the player that's got the momentum. And now that he's got a win under his belt, you feel like, the doors will open for us. Good tip.
Yeah.
Want to work less and play more golf? Well, you can. If you're practicing your putting or your drives, Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda, exclusively by Lawn Solutions Australia, can bring the golf course experience right to your home. With superior drought tolerance, speedy recovery and toughness, Tiff Tough is the smart grass. For more information, visit lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. That's lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au.
Next, the LPGA Tour stays in Asia for one more week, and the Toto Japan Classic at Saito Golf Course, and we turn to our resident Japan golf expert, Logue. And Logue, is Toto toilets?
Oh, yes, it is, Jimmy.
Yes, I thought so.
Is that underselling them? Is it more than just toilets, Logue?
Well, they're pretty impressive toilets. Have you?
Yeah,
is that what we're talking about here?
I've not experienced a Toto. Give me the pitch, Logue. Sell me.
Those magnificent toilets with the big control panels and the little thing that sticks out, and it's got three little jets. It's got a little thing that comes out. It's got 3 little jets. You can control, you can move it forward or back. or side to side and control the strength and all sorts of factors. It's actually quite remarkable. It's what the French. Sorry to slip into a bit of French for you, Rob, but it's what they call a bidet.
A bidet, yeah. The Toto de bidet.
Yeah. And
it sounds more like recreation than ablution.
I can say, like, almost every toilet you encounter in Japan now is one of those fancy toilets. And it used to be, do you remember, like, when I first went to Japan in like the early 90s, there was still the odd hole in the ground. And Australians, I think, for many years had it over. Like, in most countries we'd go to, we'd be like, oh, you know, you're going to have to put up with lesser toilets. Well, the tables have turned.
Yeah.
Toto and others like it like, wait, they've got it all over us. You don't encounter anything like this in Australia. So
lift your game, Fowlerware.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Imagine the Fowlerware Australian Open.
Some sort of a holder for a can. I saw a great headline on Twitter from the 70s, I think it was, headline from the paper. MCG introduces two dozen can limit per person going to the cricket. They're bringing it down to 2 dozen each. It was like, wow, magnificent.
But people used to inject alcohol into watermelons or something.
Vodka into the watermelon.
That was the whole thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
So onto the tournament. It's a no-cut event, co-sanctioned, but between the JLPGA and the LPGA. There's 35 players from the JLPGA, which I think is where, for me at least, a lot of the interest in this week lies. And just that we get to see a JLPGA event broadcast outside of Japan is going to be fascinating, and see some of these players on TV, because I think week in, week out, that some of the best golf in the world is being played on the JLPGA. It's one of the most, it's actually much bigger tour than the men's over there. And some fascinating golfers and some incredible golf swings and some real talents that we just don't see enough of, unfortunately. It's being played at the Seta golf course. It's a 54-hole facility, and they're going to be using the North course this week. It's your typical Japanese golf course, shaped golf course. It's like, it's very, very big property. Very, if tree-lined, beautiful views, parkland, wall-to-wall manicured turf is your thing, this course is for you. It's pretty incredible presentation, and but it's difficult to distinguish it from every other course you see in Japan, apart from the very few elite courses there. But a very consistently high standard of golf course is what you get in Japan week in, week out. Ronan Yin, we talked about, winner last week, 2 wins out of the last 3 weeks, I think. She's not playing. She's taking a rest. Shout out to Matt Burns, though, because Jin Young Ko, who has had a month off, is playing this week. So going to be very exciting for Matt Burns to watch JYK in action. Another notable in the field is Brooke Mackenzie Henderson, is coming off her top 10 last week. And also Hairan Yu, I think, is worth looking at. She just missed out last week on the action between Juno and Ronin last week. She came third. This tournament goes back to 1973. It's one of the oldest events on the JLPGA Tour, and as far as LPGA events as well, it was it goes back quite a way there as well. Some special significance this year because it's one of the last few events before the CME Group Tour Championship. Number of players on the bubble. I think it's useful to look at that around this time of year. Minjee Lee is notably 52nd in the standings, and only the top 60 get through to the Tour Championship. She's probably going to make it, but that's just not a good year, right?
It doesn't feel like she's played that poorly, does it?
No, it's been without really dramatically high finishes and the consistency that normally she just churns out. But I think there's 3 events post this. I think they go Hawaii, and then they maybe play a couple in Florida, or maybe only 2. So it'd be interesting to see what she does with her schedule if she gets closer to that bubble number. But I would have thought you can't drop that many spots, but you never know.
Leona Maguire's also 53rd, I think. Again, just feels like she's a little bit similar to Minjee, just been searching for it all year and hasn't quite found that form.
Pedestrian, I think, is the word you're looking at. Pedestrian golf for players of that level.
Indeed, yes. But I wasn't looking for that word, but that's a word. Yes. Another, just an interesting thing from the field this week. Monet Inami is the defending champion from last year, and she hasn't qualified for the event. She's a reserve defending champion. Or she's not defending. Yeah, she's a reserve.
Champion in waiting.
Yeah. She's not even the first reserve. She's the ninth reserve.
Did she win last year, Logue, or did she know that she won last year? I would have thought that was an automatic exemption, Jimmy.
I would have thought so.
On every tour in the world, it's an automatic spot. That's really interesting. It's an interesting tour, isn't it? Japan LPGA.
Yeah, it's tougher than probably any other tour to play as well. I mean, this is the thing. It was always known as, you can. It's hard to get on if you're an overseas player. You used to. I don't know if you still do, but you used to have to travel with a interpreter that you paid for. Yeah. If you came from a non-Japanese speaking background, and very difficult tour to get on. So they make tough rules. There you go.
Yeah, very difficult, but very lucrative.
Absolutely.
A couple of players from the JLPGA who I really like. Ryo Takeda. I really hope she's in contention and we get to see a bit of her on TV because she has a magnificent golf swing. Like, think Rory McIlroy, but sort of more no quirks, like technically perfect, fantastic tempo, hits the ball a mile. Just, really perfect golf swing. Ryo Takeda. She won the Japan Open recently.
You were at that, weren't you? You went there.
Women's Japan Open. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
And she actually battled it down the wire with Akie Iwai, who's also a really interesting player. That whole last day, they sort of just went shot for shot, and it was perfect golf. Like, they're both hitting every green, every fairway, and it was just up to somebody to make the smallest little mistake, like miss a birdie putt or just be inches off the green into some rough and then have a little bit of a hard time getting up and down. It was just, that was the difference. And it was really interesting to watch. And so Takeda is going to be my pick, Ryo Takeda.
Nice. I like it. I don't reckon there's another podcast where she's been tipped. So there you go. Rod, over to you.
Well, I'm not as familiar with the local players as Locust. I'm very jealous of you having been to the Japan one. So, since you mentioned it, I've been very keen, thinking maybe I might even get on a plane and go to one day. I'm not familiar with the local players like Locust. I can't help but tip Gino because I've tipped her a few times this year, and she's been a 3 rounds good, 1 not so good most of the year. She stood up last week. I think it's almost inevitable. She's not a winner, Jimmy, interestingly. She's a prolific high finisher, but not a winner. I feel like that's got to change again. So she's too good not to be winning.
She's a little bit early career Minjee Lee, where she just is relentlessly inside the top 10 and just
top 5. She really finishes up there all the time.
Right there, but just doesn't seem to get over the line. So, I agree with that. But I am going to tip Minjee Lee because she needs to probably finish her year in a bit of a positive note. So I can see her being very determined. And she took the week off last week, obviously would have stayed in the region, I'd imagine. So I expect something out of Minjee this week. If not a win, something pretty good and towards the pointy end. Finally, this week we head for the Asian Tour and the BMI Indonesian Masters, which is interesting. One of 3 titles called Masters on the Asian Tour schedule. There you go. And Rod, you're going to tell us all the details about the event and Royal Jakarta Golf Club.
Jakarta, that's the first thing. But the thing that everybody says about Royal Jakarta Golf Club is all note how heavy the traffic is on your way there. If you don't get stuck in gridlock, you're already 1 under when you arrive at the first tee. They built this course in 2008, essentially not in the middle of Jakarta, but not far away. That's an extraordinary effort to find that much land. I think it's a 27-hole facility. So, look, a little bit like Logue's Japan course, you know what to expect when you look at... Oh, sorry, BNI, by the way, the sponsor. No sponsor watch this week. BNI is a bank. It seems every week I get the tournament that's got a bank as a sponsor. Yeah, I get the bank.
You do a lot of the Asian Tour work, and it's still a big banking country.
A lot of banking, yeah, absolutely. Are other places not big banking countries? That's not a topic for this podcast. Opened in 2008, the course designed by American architect Bob Moore. This tournament started in 2011. It's always been held at this golf course. It was won by Lee Westwood, The first it's one of those events, a bit like we have here in Australia, where most of these are bigger events on the Asian Tour. They'll pay a big name player to be the draw card for the week. This week, that's going to be Bubba Watson, but we'll come to that later. Westwood won it 3 times. Justin Rose has won it. It's been less of those high-profile players in more recent years and more won by locals. Gaganjeet Bauer won it last year, and I mentioned that because Gaganjeet has one of the game's great nicknames, Ferris, as you would. Ferris Bull.
Yeah.
Western to South Nines make up the tournament course. I've only seen YouTube and highlights and whatnot. The course looks like the course you would expect. Having said that, it does tend to throw up, if you like that sort of golf, lots of birdies. The winning score here the last 5 years has not been less than 20 under. It's been, I think Justin Rose in 2017 set the record at 29 under for 4 rounds of golf, which is an average of what, six and a bit under per day, 65 and a bit shot per day. So that's some pretty good golf. So we should say that again. I was thinking something. I'll get your thoughts on this, Log. I think this is in your kind of area. This international series, this is an international series event, by the way. We've got this run of them to the end of the year. And what's on offer for that? The leader of the money list, the international series money list at the end, goes straight to Live. And we got some clarity this week, Jimmy. The next 3 players on the list will get entry into the promotions event towards the end of the year. Now, I'm finding this more interesting following this each week and noting how these players are going, what they've got to play for more than just that week, than the FedEx Cup. It's the same idea, isn't it? Make the stakes higher than just the weekly tournament and create some interest. This seems to work, but the FedEx Cup doesn't, Logue. Why? Why is this more interesting to watch than to watch the FedEx Cup and the Tour Championship finale and all that? Or am I wrong? Is it not as interesting?
I don't know. The FedEx Cup, I think there seems to be so many ways into it that, like, when it used to just be tour school, essentially it was just tour school. Yeah, I mean, you could qualify with wins, and there was an all-exempt list as well, I guess. But anyway, it was much more clear-cut. But nowadays, there seems to be a lot of routes in. There's the, what's that, PGA Academy.
There's the PGA Tour University thing. And
the university thing. There's Corn Ferry and all sorts of ways of retaining your card. I think
it's the state.
It's less clear cut. Maybe this is.
So the FedEx Cup, by the time you get to the Tour Championship, you really just, there's lots of people with lots of money playing for more money. Whereas the stakes are a bit higher. People are playing for careers to either keep a card, gain a card, and this series of events. I'm not saying it's, can't miss stuff, but it's just got more substance, it feels like, than the FedEx Cup. And it's the same idea. Play multiple events for smaller prizes along the way, and then there's one big prize at the end. Anyway, it's sort of got my attention. I think it's got.
You're very much in or out as well, aren't you? With this one, it's very clear cut. Whereas that, top players from the Corn Ferry Tour who miss out on a full card are still going to play a fair few FedEx Cups events each year.
Yeah. Anyway, so it just struck me this morning that I was finding this morning, and the reason I found it interesting is because Peter Uihlein had finished last week, jumped up to second onto the International Series Order of Merit, but he's not teeing up this week, and you would have expected him to under those circumstances. So anyway, so the golf will be good, the scoring will be good. Sorry?
I also think we should claim credit for them producing the Live Promotions thing, because we spoke about last week how they haven't actually produced it,
That's
and
exactly
suddenly
right.
it's out in the world.
It's out there.
There's also from there only one spot.
That's exactly right. So the winner of this Order of Merit of the International Series goes to Live.
Yeah.
The next 3 that are
go to the promotions. They go to the
promotion.
final stage, which is 18, 18, 36. So there's this idea of there being a promotion thing. And I think Logue's right. It's interesting because it is clear cut, but it hasn't been clear cut all year necessarily. So as players who've gone, I'm going to commit to there because that's going to be my avenue, suddenly there's one and done. It's a difficult thing, but it's probably where Liv wants to get, where it's teams have autonomy to pick and choose their players rather than use a pathway system.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, but interestingly, so the PGA Tour of Australasia, there's a bunch of exemptions into the promotions event if you will finish in the top 5, those sorts of things. Yep. So they've done it smart. So there's some things to think about for Australians as well with that. That coming up. There's also, of course, the Asian Tour Order of Merit itself. The only top 60, I'm pretty sure, keep their cards for next year, Jimmy. Jed Morgan at the moment is 57th on that list. So he, again, has got a lot to play for because it's all about where are you going to play next year. So that's what makes these tournaments more interesting, I think. The week-to-week play and who wins the trophy is good, but it's really about this bigger thing that you're working towards. And I'm finding it more interesting than the FedEx Cup, where the big thing you're working towards is another giant check or digital transaction, as it probably is these days, the soulless world we live in. Anyway, Catlin looks to have the top spot sewn up. This is why I'm surprised Peter Uline's not teaming. Although is Peter Uline a guaranteed live player? Jimmy, do you know? Is he contracted? Would that be the reason?
I don't know. He might be contracted.
Yeah.
He might have played a few, but I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah, perhaps. So that's what I'm thinking, that maybe he's already guaranteed us, but he doesn't need to win it to get there. John Catlin is playing this week. He's always a good tip, et cetera, et cetera. I think this week I'm going to stick with Nick Vogt. He played his way into last week's event by finishing in the top 10 the week before. He finished top 10 again in last week's event, tied 7th again, interestingly, but had to get an invite this week. So I don't know why he didn't qualify as part of the top 10, but I feel like he's on a bit of a roll. I said it last week, Jim. We haven't seen the best of Nick Vogt yet, and the best of Nick Vogt is very, very good. We might be starting to see the beginning of it now.
Absolutely. I agree completely, which is why I'm currently scrambling to change my tip load.
Oh,
who would you like to?
You know, you've got Catlin right there on standby.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not like I pulled the rug completely out from under you.
Interesting, there's 4 Saudi Arabian players in the event this week. I looked at their playing histories. There's a lot of missed cuts there, in the odd 80 thrown in, but some good rounds as well. So, yeah, that's. Have they been in the fields before?
You get a couple of events where a few bob up, but yeah, a few international series events, and they show up here and there, but not consistently every single time. No.
Could we assume that
it's an aspect of this whole live thing and Saudi's presence in golf that I haven't really considered? We haven't talked about a homegrown player. Well, assuming they're homegrown, but there's it'd be interesting.
Make it sound like they grow in fields, Logue. Assume they're homegrown. We're harvesting in September because all the Q schools are in November. It's harvest all the players and send them off into the world.
Anyway, that was of interest, but I'm going with another standby, Ben Campbell.
Nice.
Well, he's been pushed down to 3rd on that International Series Order of Merit, so he's got a lot to play for too. He wants to keep his spot in that top 3. So Peter Uline not playing this week will help him a lot.
I'm going to make my adjustment and go with Maverick Antcliffe, who had a good week last week, top 10 and proven winner. Went on a run in the old China Tour days, PGA Tour China, I think it was, that got him the China Tour, not PGA Tour China, and got him a European Tour card at the time and all that sort of stuff. And another one that I think we haven't seen his best golf consistently for a while. Is a really, really good player. Had a bit of a wandering period there, but I think is very much on the way back. So, and a good guy. So,
am I right in thinking that he had a haircut, Jimmy? No,
he did have a
Maverick
haircut
for the long flowing hair out the back, and then I saw him a few weeks ago on TV, and it was like, what happened to that man? Where's his money?
Yeah, no. Yeah, cut the hair off a little while ago. Very well dressed guy, Mav Antcliffe. Always in very good clothes. So not good on him. That will pretty much do us for episode 87, a milestone episode that we've decided is a milestone for no reason other than we can. Rod, thank you, and good luck with whatever project you're choosing to inflict upon Sydney Podcast Studios in your Nudgy Golf-like renovation.
I may need luck for the next stage, but we'll see.
Oh, luck. Okay. And Logue, thank you. And just before we go, would you like to publicly cover off or admit anything about your chipping display yesterday that I witnessed firsthand?
Well, it was good enough to win more skins than you, Jimmy.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Doesn't have to be good, does it, Logue? It just has to be good enough.
I did what I needed to do.
We call it, Rod, getting logued when you just like there's just things happen and then he somehow does something to beat you. It's right. Yeah, it's always a good sign when someone hits a chip and looks back down the hole at the other players because they don't know that they saw what they just saw.
Outstanding. Good stuff.
You can, of course, follow along with all these events and so much more on the Golf Australia magazine website, golfaustralia.com.au, where you will also find our sibling podcast, The Thing About Golf, co-hosted by Rod and the great John Huggan. Rod, who is next on the guest list of The Thing About Golf as I watch you stumble and think?
No, it's next week. It's not this week, so it'll be tomorrow week, next Wednesday. And I'm pretty sure, I can't remember, I had a couple to choose from. Huggy gets on a roll. He goes to tournaments and he interviews all these players. So then we've got content for 6 months and you've got to decide. I think it might be Tim Barter, the Sky Sports on-course commentator who does those, is one of the few in the world that does those on-course things really, really well and has a really interesting backstory. I think it's Tim Barter. If it's not, it might be Rich Beam, but I think we might have done Rich Beam last week.
It seemed like Rod was having a go at you there, Jimmy.
But... How?
Yeah, it felt like it a little bit. Yeah.
How's that?
A little on-course walking interviews.
Oh, sorry.
I think a lot of people do them really well.
It
Sorry.
felt like he was just having another go at you there.
An
just like
accidental
anything that
drive
you
by.
ever do.
And that's like my wheelhouse. That's where all the value I bring. Ask
You're
Elvis.
sitting
Elvis
right
like
there.
30s after I do it.
Jimmy,
guys,
Jimmy, can I advise you to have a listen to the Tim Barter interview?
Yeah.
It'll improve your own on-course
I
work.
like Tim Barter a lot. I think he does.
He's fat. In fact, as a budding on-course, I'm sure you do watch Tim Barter and other on-course reporters and take bits and pieces from him. It's not as an easy job as it looks, is it?
No.
Being out there, people in your ear, you're calling shots off tape sometimes you're nowhere near the ball and they're asking you about the lie.
Yep.
It's fun, I'm sure. It's not like having to fit tires for a living, but I'm sure it's got its challenges too.
Well, so long as I've had 2 events with playoffs and one in end of the world winds and rain, and Ryan Lynch did last week and got sun and a regulation finish with an early thing. So I already told Lynchy if he keeps getting that and I keep getting the opposite, I'm completely off him. So we'll see what happens in nudging this week.
20 minutes before the tournament's finished because some kid's fired a great round. He's done. By the time they handed out the trophy, he's already in the car on his way back to the hotel. Nice.
Exactly. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week on Playing from the Tips.